Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Matt Gardner. Today, I have a fellow Enlifted coach, Kevin Wood, also a fellow Canadian on the show. And he is my guest today. He is also the host of the Resilient Humans podcast. I guested on his show a little while ago. I'd say a month and a half ago. So, Kevin, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. I'm really excited for this. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for it too. Yeah, I really enjoyed your show, being on your show, and I would highly recommend anybody to check out your show. I love the name of your show, The Resilient Humans. So cool. I love the word resilient. I know that we had a bit of a conversation about that when I was on your show as well.
Yeah, man.
So
We
yeah,
went we
dude.
went deep onto that in some sections
Yes.
of it. It was really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So highly recommend anybody check your show out and obviously give it a listen. I thought we had a really good conversation. So I'm excited for today as well. So yeah, dude, like let's get into what you got going on. You have the podcast, obviously the Enlifted coach. So anybody that's been listening to my show is familiar with that as my background, my coaching certification background. So you're going through your level 2 now. You are, a CrossFit gym owner, operator.
Oh yeah. It'll be almost 15 years.
Yes, amazing stuff. Okay, cool. Well, let's start with like the now, and then what we'll do, we'll circle back and get an origin story out of you. Yeah,
Cool.
tell me a little bit about your CrossFit gym. So 15 years, like CrossFit, I'm thinking 15 years ago was pretty fringe by that point, wasn't it? Like obviously it's blown up now, especially over I'd say the last 5 to 7 years, but like 15 years ago was how was CrossFit like, and how did you get into it, I guess?
It was definitely more like an underground style kind of training.
Yeah.
I was actually, when I found it, I was teaching at the time. So I was a phys ed teacher for 5 years prior to owning a gym. And it was actually one of the parents that came in for parent teacher interviews one night and mentioned, he's like, hey, he was a police officer, and he goes, me and my patrol guys, we do CrossFit for our fitness. Maybe you should try it out and see if you would like to do it with your students, because there's obviously a fitness component to physical education. And so I looked at the website and I was like, wow, that looks crazy. Like people would die if they did those workouts. And
Yeah.
I hummed and hawed over it for a little while. And then a couple months later, I tried my first workout. And sure enough, I couldn't walk for about a week. I actually had to ask the secretary at the school for a key to the elevator because I couldn't walk downstairs. It was that bad.
Oh
So
man, yeah.
obviously I have a ton of experience and gone through multiple certifications since then, and understand the concept of individualization and scaling and progressions. So people that walk through the door, they get sore, but not to the point where they might need a wheelchair.
Wheelchair, elevator, yeah, these
Yeah.
types of things. That's great. That's great. So 15 years, and is it Moncton, Ontario?
Yeah. CrossFit
Okay.
Moncton, New Brunswick.
Yes. New Brunswick. Yeah, pardon me. Yeah. See, there's
Yeah.
a show. I'm Western Canadian. You see how
You're way out there.
how much I'm paying attention to you guys out east there. I know Toronto, and that's about it. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So 15 years, like, man, that is a really good run. There's so many people that even in our coaching community that are starting up, or in their first couple of years of business. 15 years. So like, congrats on that.
And it's cool.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think about when I started. I heard a podcast recently that said, if you look back at your original Instagram posts and if you don't cringe, you're not making progress. And I look back at my programming and the way I was coaching and the marketing
Yeah.
I was doing back then, super cringe, right? So now it's, maybe in 15 years time, I'll look back at today and think the same thing. I hope
Yeah,
so.
right.
That's what I actually hope for. So
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, right? You hope to cringe. You're like, or your intention is to cringe at
yeah.
this 15 years from now. Yeah, really cool. I mean, a lot of conversely, a lot of things have changed in 15 years. Like even the rise of like Instagram and social media really has changed substantially in that last 15 years. So I imagine the way that you were putting your word out back in the day. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong. Imagine you just had like a website, like
Yeah.
how else would you get the word out back then?
Facebook was still kind of new.
Kind of new.
So um, it was around, I guess, for a while. I remember when I was teaching at the school that I found out about CrossFit, it was 2006.
Mm.
And Facebook was just kind of getting off the ground. It was like popular at universities and stuff in the States, but it hadn't like branched out yet into like businesses and stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, 2008 is when I affiliated, and we used Facebook. I just pushed it out there, and it's funny how it reached people. Like at our grand opening, we had like, let's say 40 or 50 people show up to a playground in the back of a school, and we just worked out on the playground set.
Wow.
And yeah, that's how it was born. And then it started
Yeah.
getting dark and cold, and we're like, should probably find an indoor location soon. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Ah, so cool. Okay. We'll pause it there. I want to go back to, your however far you want to go back, as far as if it's your childhood or various different things. I also want to say to everybody, we're going to post this episode on both my, Matt Gardner Live, the sort of the variety show I do, as well as Beyond Recovery, which is my, addiction and alcohol recovery. So I know you have a story of your own that you'd like to get into. So for those that are listening and wanting that, we will get to that, of course, as well. But yeah, let's go back to back in time as far as you want to go. As far as, just an origin story, as how you got into finding the importance of, physical activity, and yeah, just a little bit more about yourself, please.
It's funny you bring this up now. I didn't recognize that this was the origin story until I worked through this story. And it was just recently, within the last like few weeks.
Nice.
And so one of the affirmations that we came up with was, I've been kicking ass for a long time. And we pinpointed it to when it started. And back in the day, like starting when I was about 6 years old, I was into BMX racing. And that was like my thing. Every weekend we'd go to the track and I would race. And that was like the first memory, I guess, I have of like competing and really pushing my body and my limits to see what I was capable of. And I did that for quite a few years, I think, and right until they tore down the track. Basically, they tore down the track and turned it into a car salesman, like a car lot or whatever.
Ooh.
But I remember I told myself the last year that I was racing, I set a goal to win every single race that I did. And I did. I accomplished that. And I came out. I was the only person to do that year, was to win every single race that I went in. And that was kind of the birth of my, I guess, value of challenge, grit, determination, all those fancy words for being motivated to succeed.
When you were, I guess, what was the source of your motivation? Was that competing with others, or were you competing with yourself, or a healthy balance of two? Or how would you, characterize that looking back on it now?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. Looking back, I want to say it was an equal balance of the two, but it was probably mostly for, I wanted to beat everybody else.
Nice.
Actually, I wanted the biggest trophy.
There we go.
That's what it was
cool.
for.
That's cool.
Yeah. Because I remember at the end of the year, we'd have these big banquet ceremonies, and the trophies were as tall as us.
Yes.
Like, they were massive trophies. So
that's rad.
Yeah.
That's rad. So the initial, I could see that initially when you're growing up, you want that trophy, you want that, like, that validation. How has that changed for you now? Like, do you fancy yourself fairly competitive, or is it more self competition now, or do you still have that drive? You see somebody, you're like, I can beat that guy.
Not as much. Now that's still there, obviously. Like, that guy's doing this, and I could probably do that. I want to see if I can. But yeah, mostly it's all that internal drive. I thrive on discovering my limits, and that's both physically and mentally. I want to know how far I can push myself. And it's funny, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. I go in these, I call them waves of different things. It's basically like seasons almost. So right now I'm in a weightlifting season, and just recently I qualified for the Masters Pan Ams. And so at the end of May, we're going down to Orlando, and it's this international competition, and it's crazy. Like, that wasn't even on my radar for this year, but my training went so well because I was, again, competing with myself to see how far I could push my body, and I ended up qualifying. I was like, oh crap. Now we have to like make travel plans to go down.
Yeah.
So,
Congrats,
Yeah,
man.
thank you.
Yeah, that's solid.
It's crazy that it happened. And then
Yeah.
after Pan Am's, I don't know what's next.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I just love discovering it. So all these
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
seasons of like physical challenges, mental challenges, like we've done the Spartan races, Go Ruck
Yeah.
events, triathlons, the whole
Wow.
deal. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you'll just immerse yourself in this challenge and the training that comes along with it. I like that the comparison or the analogy of like a season. I really like that. That's really cool. I imagine though, like being a business owner, there's the other side of you where there's this daily consistency thing, right? To have about, or, a work-life balance and such, and just to have a business that you've owned for 15 plus years. There's other, I imagine on the flip side of this season, this immersive chunk of time that you're doing it with training or such, there's also that more granular, consistent day to day way of showing up as well. That's another side of your personality. Is that correct?
yeah, 100%. And I would not be where I am or as successful without the people around me. If you don't have that support system, that gets infinitely more challenging to do. So the coaches that I have working for me at the gym, my family, like none of this would happen if it wasn't for all of those people that are in my corner helping me. So my wife actually put together like a fundraiser at the gym for us, or to allow me to go to the Pan Ams, because it's
No way.
obviously a large expense
Of
to
course.
register and get down there and
Yeah.
compete. So just the support we've had from everybody
Yeah.
is remarkable.
Well, let's get into your team and even your family. I want to start with your team though. So, like, when you were starting out, I'm imagining just yourself, or did you
Yep.
have a business partner? Just yourself. So, I mean, that's
Kind
not,
of. I had
yeah,
people helping me, but I wouldn't
helping
call them like a business
business.
partner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure,
Yeah.
they didn't have the same level of skin in the game that you did at that point. Okay, interesting. And then when did it start branching out for yourself? Like when did you you went from that playground that you mentioned of day one, to like a brick and mortar? And when did you get your first gym? Like just some of those milestones. Let's roll back the clock to the origin of like the actual business when you got it up and running.
Yeah. So July 5th, 2008 is when we had that grand opening workout at the park. And then it was somewhere in October of that same year, it started getting dark and cold. So I found this, I want to say it was like 500 square feet, maybe not even that, but we could fit a maximum of 6 people in the gym. And like that was kind of like bursting at the seams.
That's
And so
so
I would
cool.
run a couple classes during the evenings and some on the weekends because I was still teaching at the time. And I knew that if I wanted this thing to expand, that I needed help. And so it was literally just taking my members and plucking them out and saying, "Hey, would you like to help out and be a coach?" And that's how we've grown ever since. Like 98% of our coaches have come from within our membership because they get it. They
Yeah.
understand our core values.
Yeah.
They understand the business and the way the classes run and operate. They
Mhm.
understand people. And
Mhm.
so that's how we hire. And it's been a godsend to us.
I think that's a great way, right? I mean, you guys already have rapport, or guys and gals already have rapport, right? It's you've seen each other on a daily basis. Like you say, they know the ins and outs of the expectations, whether it's of yourself or of others, or to be able to train it or explain it to others, right? And just yeah, it does seem like a very natural, organic way to grow instead of perhaps hiring off the street and be like, okay, well, I'll take you at your
Right.
word that you know all this stuff, right? Where meanwhile you've been experiencing the ups and downs and everything else with these people in the meantime. So yeah, dude, that's really cool. Really cool. So how many of those people that are sort of in that day one or in around that first year, we'll call it, are still coaches with you here 15 years later? Is anybody from that original crew?
My mom,
Yes. Tremendous.
she's
Hey,
actually a
yeah.
coach for
Shout out your
us.
mom. That's amazing.
She
That's so
coaches our
cool.
master's class. So
No
it's
way.
literally a bunch of
Yes.
like old retired ladies and they just
Dude,
come in and they work out. It's
that is
amazing to see.
so cool. That is so
Yeah.
cool. Shout out your mom for sure. That is
Well,
so cool.
I believe she's the oldest CrossFit level 1 trainer in Canada.
Hell yeah. Oh man, that's so
Crazy.
cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Hey, okay, I'm glad I asked that question. That's neat. Yeah, and then since then, like has there been anybody, has there been anything else that has happened? Like, say, for example, somebody that was like a 5-year coach for you and they've gone and they moved on to somewhere else in Canada or the States and they opened one as well. Like, do you have
Yep,
almost
that's
an
happened.
yeah, I was
It's
gonna say,
happened
like,
multiple times. And
interesting,
so
right? Yeah.
the first time that happened, it hurt a lot,
Mm.
like really bad, because it was all done behind my back. I didn't know it was
Ah,
happening,
okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it really sucked. Like it sucked
Yeah.
hard. They ended up taking a good chunk of our members with them as well,
Ah,
and it almost bankrupted the business. And so I want to
man.
say that was one of the businesses or my lowest points in business
Mm.
ownership. And then obviously we rebuilt from that, and we
Yeah.
came out of it. And then it happened again, and it didn't they again, it was a bunch of trainers that left, went to the other gym. That's fine. They
Mm.
took some members with them, but I
Mhm.
was able to understand why, and I was more okay with it. And then it happened
Mm.
the third time, and recently I sent that trainer a message saying that I was proud of him for following his dream.
Hmm.
And it just sending out that gratitude lifted a giant weight off my shoulders. It's
Yeah.
crazy. That the emotion that I felt lifted from that moment on was
So you had a
remarkable.
pretty big release,
Yeah.
but it's like you giving yourself permission to just it's gone now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I initially asked that as I thought there'd be, under the guise that it was this potential affiliates where you're all supporting each other, and then you're mentioning it's, taking your formula and doing it behind your back. Like, oof, yeah. When was that first time that happened? Like you mentioned, where it was like it hurt the most and it was like the low point. What year was that? How far were you into your
So
business?
4 years, I think, 4 years after I opened. So,
Yeah,
we were still in the growing phase. And so
exactly. Yeah.
that's why it kind of stung
Stung.
so much. Right.
Yeah,
But
definitely. Definitely. How many coaches do you have under you at this point in time?
14.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
One for every year you're open, including yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. That's so cool. Now, I'm curious how everything changed for you during COVID. So, have you
Yeah.
switched do you have a bit of a hybrid model now? Like, do you guys do like Zoom classes? Yeah, how did you survive or navigate the COVID the last 3 years leading up till now?
It was obviously a large change. And in New Brunswick, we were locked down 4 separate occasions. I'm
Mm,
not sure how many total weeks we were locked down, but it was enough to sting. Like
yeah.
it
Yeah.
hurt a lot of people. And one, two, three CrossFit gyms in our town closed down permanently
Ooh.
as a result. So the fact that we survived was crazy to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we were locked down, though, we pivoted hard, and we put all of our members on individualized online programming right away. Like
Nice.
there was
Nice.
no hesitation. And keeping constant contact with them, daily feedback. If they did a workout, I would reply to everybody and say, like, great job, good push on this, whatever it was, right? And as a result, over 70% of our membership stayed on paying full price while we were
Wow.
locked down.
Yeah.
They didn't have to,
Yeah.
but they chose to, because they knew that we were still invested in them regardless of
Mm,
the circumstances.
yeah.
And that goes back to one of our core values. Like I
Mhm.
literally have it right here. The first one, it says service, help
Yeah.
first mentality.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
my
dude.
mindset.
Yeah.
How can I help?
Mm,
It's not the way I was, but there's going to
mm,
be a new way, and I'm going to find out what that way is. And so
mm,
we still have, we've been back open for the last lockdown was just January of last year.
mhm,
And since then, we still have clients that are using our hybrid or online model,
mm.
and it works well for them. And that's great. As long as
Yeah.
we can still help them. That's the main point.
I love that leading with service over anything else, right? And
Yeah.
it's easy to go into that backpedal a little bit in yourself into go into like a more of a scarcity mindset or a fear-based mindset. So for you to just go on that keep that higher level, higher vibe, service-based approach, I'm sure that must have cut, kept you that cut above from, unfortunately, those other gyms that did have to close down, right?
Yeah.
I imagine the longevity too, right? Who knows? Who's to say it's in a different quantum reality if you were year 2 or 3 when that happened, right? But you had this big, body of work, and you've been through the ups and downs and all arounds. And by that time you're probably 12 years in, right? So I'm just, being able to believe in yourself and keep that like high level of service. Yeah, that's a cool story. I'm
Yeah.
really happy to hear that. Thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, because I wanted to get into, and this is a good spot to segue into it, because I did enjoy talking about like the word resilience, obviously, and we mentioned at the very beginning, a little teaser there at the beginning of our interview. And I'm picking up on resiliency from you, and so let's get into like core values too. So you mentioned service. What are your other two in there that you had on your chart that you showed?
Well, this is for the business, and they're obviously personal as well.
Yeah,
Service is number 1.
yeah,
Challenge is number 2.
very cool. Yeah.
And I was just telling somebody today about this, actually. I have a person, the name of a person, and a story associated with each one of those core values.
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
those mean something to me because I
Yeah.
experienced those things,
Experienced. Yeah.
and they lasted. They stuck with me for so long that they're now a part of my business and the reason
Yeah.
my business still exists even now after
Yeah.
COVID.
Damn. Yeah. That's some conviction right there. I love having this man, and we know it from what Mark has taught us, Mark being the head coach in Enlifted, and just like anybody, we're both getting into public speaking, we're both testing the waters on, and, both sides of our business that way. I think a big part of learning something or retaining something is hearing a good story, right? Like you can have somebody come up and just share some stats or something, but if they like share the stats in the context of like a dramatic story, I'm much more likely to remember the numbers and what he's talking about because I was so engaged in the storytelling, right? Is that the same for you? Like that's why I love that you mentioned each core value has a story attached to it. And then that's why it can sort of bridge the gap between it being a personal value for yourself and one for your business as well.
Yeah. It really just provides meaning and investment into it. Like there's literal blood, sweat, and tears that came as a result of those stories. So yeah, they definitely have value and meaning to them.
So what is it about challenge? And, I think this will get back into what you were talking about. You enjoy exploring. You're curious about where your limitations are, which to a lot of people, that's very, very, instead of the excitement that engages the fear, which fear and excitement can show up very similar in the body. Right. So what is it about you that enjoys doing that? And, I'm picturing, are you a David Goggins fan? or is that usually a little too extreme? Because
he's out there. He's a little on the crazy side, if you ask me. And there doesn't have to be. I prefer there to be balance.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
a lot of things where I find for him it's really one-sided, like
very
literally
binary,
all in 100%. So
yeah, definitely.
And I get that for certain things, but why do I really, it goes back to that BMX story.
Yeah.
And then there's moments in my life kind of along the way that kind of piggyback off of that. And one of those stories comes from high school. And it was that grade 9 teacher that I had that took me to Cape and Rage. It was this, school-wide group challenge. And that was the main message. Well, that was the name of the event. It was called Cape Challenge.
Okay.
And they put us in very challenging and uncomfortable situations that we had to work through in a fun way.
Okay.
And when I left those weekends, or it was actually a week-long event, I felt like a transformed person. And so that's when I started to recognize that there's a benefit to doing hard things.
Mm.
And so now I start banking these things. I have a whole memory bank of all the hard shit that I've done over my life that I can look back on and say, well, if I can do that, then this is nothing.
Mm.
Like, for instance, one challenge that I did, this was years and years ago, was what's called the burpee mile. So you lay on the ground, you get up, and then you broad jump forward as far as you can. And you do that until you complete 1 mile. It took me about an hour and 20 minutes. My hands were raw by the end of it. And in total, it was about 720 burpees or so.
Man.
Now, if I have to do 50 burpees, I'm like, meh,
Yep.
whatever. That's
Yeah.
nothing. I've done 700 plus in one session. So
Yeah.
these little things like that, I just bank them all. And like, oh, I've gone 63 hours without food before. I
Mm.
can last until supper without having a snack. No problem.
Right. Right. Okay. I love that. I love that. So like the moon, like your own personal moon landing type thing. If I can land on the moon, certainly I can. Right. One quote that always stuck with me is that movie Fight Club, where the I think the Edward Norton character had mentioned just from going to like the Fight Club, he verbalized it as everything else in his life, the volume got turned down on. So certain things
Yes.
that would be like
Yep.
anxious otherwise are just like, no, it's all good. I got this. Yeah.
And
I
that's
love
why I
that.
started getting into the cold tub therapy. So I have a
Mm,
cold tub in my garage, and every Sunday I get in it and I use my breathing to bring myself down, to calm
yeah.
myself down. And I use that again if I get put into a stressful situation like road rage, or my kid is freaking out over oatmeal not being hot enough or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I can breathe through it. I
Yeah.
recognize that stress can be controlled through your breathing. And I
Yeah.
practice that with intention when I
Yeah.
put my body in a stressful situation, like dunking it in cold water.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. That's some good insight. Yeah. Thanks. Let's get back to the word, and yeah, we're getting into your family. I want to circle back to them for sure. And you mentioned the importance of teams and family and such. We will get to there. Just the word resilient then. So why is that such a championed word of yourself, to the point that you named your podcast after, the resilient humans?
That is my mission, to build resilient humans.
Yes.
And it obviously CrossFit had a lot to do with that, because I can see doing hard things creates more resilient humans.
Mm,
It's the byproduct. It just
yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
It's almost like they don't have the choice. And a lot of people don't recognize that when they first sign up. It's really cool and fulfilling to see somebody do something that they've never done before and that they've never thought they could do before.
Mm,
That's when they have that moment, my heart grows another size.
yeah.
It's crazy to see. Like, I had a guy tonight. He's an older gentleman, and he's repping out, strict pull-ups tonight. And I was like, do you know what percentage of the population can do a strict pull-up? I said, it's less than 1%.
Wow.
It should be 90, but
Yeah.
it's less than 1%.
Wow.
What percentage of people your age could do it?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
like, that's a fraction of a fraction of
Point
a
one or
fraction of
something.
a
Yeah.
percentage, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
like, you are literally the tip of the spear. And he just, like, his
Lit
eyes went
up.
super wide, right? It was
Yeah.
just neat. Like, that's,
It is.
to me, that's my mission. It's this it.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
It fuels me. It
Yeah.
keeps me motivated and driven to continue doing what I'm doing.
Totally. I like that, man. It's like we get, like, I get so to the point where I want to understand everything, like want to know the why. And I like how you're just like, I don't know why. It's like asking the tree, why does the tree want to grow as tall as it possibly can? I think
Yeah.
it's just our human nature. Like there's something in us that wants to expand or grow to the optimal, whatever it may be. And you to just have clarity in that. I mean, that's amazing. That's great. I
I
think
mean,
I say leave it that way. You don't have to know why, right?
and I've had people tell me that I'm a very resilient human as well. And thank you to those people that have said that. But I know that I've had people in my life that have helped me develop into that type of person. And now I want to be that person for other people.
Yeah.
And so it's literally my way of giving back. That's it.
That's super cool. Reminds me, like, yeah, the hero's journey, right? Where it's just like you get to a certain stage of the hero's journey, and then it the whole idea is that you go back and repay it. So you've been through a certain something in your life, and then you go back and help people go through that same thing that you have the knowledge of, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, super cool. Well, let's get into your family then. We've mentioned them, and you mentioned I actually, before we do, there's one of the last bridging of the gap between the two concepts, like the two topics. So is resiliency also dependent on having that team around you? Like, would you be as resilient if you didn't have a team or a family around you?
I'm very glad you brought that up. So I've obviously interviewed a lot of people and I asked them what their definition of resiliency is. And I've never received the same answer twice, which I love. I absolutely love that I get different answers. And I still don't have a definition, even after all these years of doing it. What I do know is that resiliency has a spectrum to it. And at one end of it is that gritty, do hard things, nose to the grindstone, never give up kind of stuff. And at the other end of the spectrum is vulnerability, asking for help, knowing when it's time to say no. Those are also parts of being resilient. And if you're too far on one side and not on the other, you're missing a big chunk of resiliency. And so it's good to have that balance of the two. So really it's trying to bridge the gap between those two. And so that's where I see that David Goggins example. Like,
sure,
he's extreme, hard push, never give up. If you fall down, get back up, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of it is equally as important. And it's where a lot of people fall short. So, asking for help, having that support, that's also part of it. And that's where my family and friends and team come into play.
I love that. It reminds me of, if you get into like the energy centers, like chakras, if you have too much to the left, or it's you're gonna have like I guess what would be perceived like negative characteristics about that if it's out of balance. And then same thing, if you're too much to the right hand side, it's going to be like overbearingly almost annoying or just overly assertive on some fashion. So that the idea is to find a balance right smack in the middle, so you have a good healthy pull of either side. So I could totally see it showing up like that. Yeah, let's get into your family then, man. So how long have you been with I guess I was gonna say with your current family? I have no idea. Like, are you married? You guys kids? You mentioned you have at least one kid. You mentioned already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Married for a while. I don't know how many years. It's more than 10.
More
than 10 years.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Yeah.
But it's been great.
Awesome.
Married my wife, Joanna, August, some summer. It was literally the day before a hurricane came in and we were getting married on a beach. Wow. So it was pretty neat. Anyway. And I have a beautiful daughter, Holly. She's 9 years old and super independent, we'll call it, I guess.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
What's the positive way of saying strong-willed? That's the one.
Independent. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Power of words, as we've learned. Speaking of, okay, that's awesome. So shout out to your family there. I'm getting the impression that you're a very loyal person as well. Like you, again, with that, like show up, stick with something. There's some loyalty that I'm hearing from, 10 years plus in the current relationship you're in, 15 plus years as gym owner. I'm picking up on this. With the power of words that we just mentioned there, choosing your word, you're kind of like, well, how do I word this? Perfect way to bring up Enlifted. How has the Enlifted method, just like the inner dialogue and the way that you communicate with other people and the picking of the words and such, how has that married into what you do with the CrossFit gym?
So I've identified that there's 3 pillars within the realm of health that helps to build a resilient human. And that is fitness, nutrition, and mindset. When I first started CrossFit, it was a 100% fitness bucket. All of it was fitness. And then I started to recognize that, okay, you can have all the fitness in the world, but if you're not eating properly, then none of the fitness really counts. It doesn't matter what you do if you're just filling your body with sugar and alcohol and what have you. And so then I started taking nutrition courses. So now I'm a precision nutrition level 2 coach.
Nice.
And then I started recognizing that you can do training, you can eat well, but if you have a shitty mindset, then again, none of that matters. Or it makes everything else a lot harder. Enter Enlifted. And
Yeah.
so now it's kind of it's been a game changer because it brings together all three things, and I have a really good understanding of it, and I really enjoy it because it feels like now I have the complete picture. Like
Yeah.
I can help the whole person and not just the individual pieces that I was doing before.
Yeah. I love that. You often hear things of the sort, like you can't out train a bad diet.
Yeah.
And
Unless you're Michael
absolutely,
Phelps, but yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There are some exceptions to the rules. Uh, but it's just like, it's interesting. I imagine it's the same thing, man. You can't out train a bad mindset either, right?
That's
I mean,
absolutely true.
to a degree, or you hear of people that have this like body dysmorphia, even though they have like 5% body or 7%
Yep.
body fat, and they still think they're fat. And man, it's got to be just so torturous, to go through that, right? So yeah, I love
And I
that. I
see
love it.
that. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
People talk about, and I had Mark England on the podcast recently, and we talked about that. What are some of the, what's one of the main reasons people work out for? And we hear it all the time. The words match up.
Mm,
Barbell therapy.
mm,
I'm exercising for my mindset or my mental health.
yeah.
Why? What is it what is missing from your life? And we know
Yes. Yeah.
exercising does boost your
Yeah.
mood. It makes you feel better.
Hell yeah.
But why were you feeling bad in the first place?
Sure.
That's where that mindset thing comes in.
Mm,
So that's what I'm enjoying diving into, is finding out what's that inner dialogue that's happening
mhm.
before you come to the gym. Because
Yeah.
if we can get that fixed and tuned up,
Hmm.
then your workouts are going to start to feel way better. Then you're
Right.
going to feel great about eating well. Like
Yeah.
everything else is just going to kind of fall into place, and it won't be this battle. People use fitness as a battle or a reward system, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not designed for that.
So you say the mindset thing is like a precursor to coming to the gym. Like let's do some of this Enlifted, the story work, or just how is your inner dialogue? Do some checking in on that. That's a good like precursor to actually entering the gym, or catch them at the beginning of it, or
Well,
how is that?
that's what I want to start getting into. So
Yeah.
again, this
Super
is
cool
still,
idea.
I feel like a white belt. I'm totally
Yeah.
like a student into this. So
Yeah.
right now I'm taking some of my current clients through story work, and
Cool.
I always ask permission, like see if they're cool with me going into those deep, dark stories that they have buried in the back of their head. And
Yeah.
if they're cool with it, I'm cool with it as well. And we'll
Yeah.
dive into there and, dismantle them and quiet that voice down a bit.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
still
Very
new to
cool.
it, but I'm digging it so far.
Yeah, I bet your clients are and will continue to dig it as well as you continue to integrate it in there. And you mentioned one of the magic words, which I wanted to get into, is the your choice to become alcohol free and how that showed up for you. And as far as the choice, and yeah, why did you make the choice, and how long has it been for you now? And yeah, what is life like now that you have decided to live alcohol free?
So again, I said my second value was challenge, and that's how it started. It literally started as a 30-day challenge.
Interesting. I
And
love it.
so it was just over 3 years ago. My last drink was at a New Year's Eve party. And the next day I was like, I'm going to see if I can go 30 days without. And so I was going to go till the end of January and just see how it goes. And that's cool. When I say challenge, I also go into it with the mindset of, let's see what happens. It's a very
Mm,
curious mindset
yeah.
because I had no expectations. Like if I was successful, cool. If I wasn't, well, I probably learned something. And so I made it to the end of the month, and I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to make it till, I think I said June 1st. So, or June 30th, the end of June. So 6 months. I was like,
Hmm.
made a month. Let's try it for 6, see how it goes. made it to the end of June. I was like, I wonder how long I can go. And so I just kept asking the question over and over again. And then now it's almost over 3 years later, and
Yes.
still haven't gone back. So
Yeah.
it's
Congrats,
been
man.
yeah, it started out as a challenge and now it's kind of just a lifestyle. Like I don't want to say I don't think about it. That's
Mm,
not, because that's not accurate. Um, I was never a heavy drinker. It was always socially, weekends, camping trips or events or whatever.
mhm,
Um, and I found that first year, that summer was the most challenging of all. But again, I like leaning into challenge. So then I had to come up with creative solutions. And so when we were camping and around the campfire and everybody else is drinking and they'd offer me, hey, do you want this? Hey, try this. I was big into apple ciders. Like, man, I loved a nice hard cider. And
mhm.
they'd bring up all these cool ones that I'd never seen before. And they're like, oh, you'd really love this one. And I'm like, I'm sure I would. So my creative way of coming around that was I started finding different kind of like bubbly drinks.
Mhm.
And there's one that I really gravitated towards, and it's called Vivo.
Mm.
Not sponsored by them or anything, but I did send them a message through their
Yeah.
Instagram. And
Yeah.
I told them this story. And I said, thanks for being around because you've helped me through this challenging summer of not drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
So it was a neat little way of like substituting
Mm.
one thing in your hand that is not good for your health
Mhm, mhm.
or something else that's not nearly as bad. It's not
Yeah.
100% great, but it's still a better choice.
Yeah.
So now we
Did
are
that
over
that's
three
awesome,
years
man.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, congrats. That's amazing. So you went from 30-day challenge to a 1,000 plus and running,
Yeah.
still tallying it up day challenge. So that's really cool. I love hearing that. As you know, with my program, I do like the various 30-day challenges, and it's really cool to see, when somebody gets to the stage where they're at day 30 and they're like, you know what, I feel great. I've saved a bit of money. I have so much
Right.
more energy, and then just take that ball and run with it. So yeah, really cool. And yeah, not surprising at all that it started as a challenge with the stories that you've
Yeah.
been talking about before. That makes complete and total sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, awesome, man. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, anything else you wanted to hit on? Do you have anything that you wanted to talk about as far as just any kind of promotion? If I feel free to, plug your website, or not website, podcast as well. Anything you want to wrap up with today, Kevin?
Obviously your podcast is great. I've listened to a few episodes, but yeah, if you want to listen to the Resilient Humans podcast, please do. We always end our episodes, and I make it a point. I want to make sure that my episodes are not just motivational and inspirational. I want them to be practical. And
Mm.
so at the end of every single episode, we give you something to actually go out and do. What are you going to do
Mm,
after you listen to this?
yeah.
And that's the main mission. Again, it's to create resilient humans.
Hmm.
And so in order to do that, those people that are listening actually have to do something. And so we
Yeah.
always give them that kind of piece of homework to do at the end. So yeah, as of recording this though, I actually just started building my own website when it comes to the story work. And so
Very
I
cool.
just purchased the domain ifixyourmindset.com.
Wow, that was still available.
I
That's
cannot
yeah,
believe that was still an
right.
option.
That is especially the .com. Like I thought you would have,
Right.
if you had said that and been like
.org or
.info biz. Yeah,
infobiz.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, yeah, yeah,
Something.
got it for like $2. Wow, that's actually shocking. Congratulations
All
again.
right.
That's a pretty good score. That's a
That's
good
the
score.
next couple weeks project for me, is
Very cool.
to get that website up and running, and then
Yeah.
people can book a discovery call and see what that's all about.
Wonderful. Well, by the time that this episode airs, that I imagine that website will be up and running. Because what are we at, beginning of March? This episode will air, I imagine, beginning to mid-April. So there's a good
There's my
chance.
goal. There's
There
my
we
goal.
go.
Have it ready before
Beautiful.
it's aired.
Yeah, exactly. So anybody that's listening to this now, have a look at, and I'm going to write this down so I can put it in the show notes. It was iFix. What is it? iFix.
ifixyourmindset.com.
Wow. Mindset.com. Beautiful. So everybody have a look at that. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on the show today, man. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed, you being on your show, and it was great to repay the favor. And yeah, keep going with that, earning your, I venture a guess you're beyond a white belt at this point. I mean, you are in level 2 and lifted, so getting into a brown belt perhaps. We'll see. We'll
Somewhere
see.
up there.
Yeah, somewhere up there. So yeah, dude, I really appreciate you coming on, and you're always welcome. The door is always open. So thanks for just sharing more about you and just some of that insight. And yeah, I guess I really like the idea of like, there's so much in the personal development, whether it's audiobooks or podcasts, where people do exactly what you mentioned. They listen to it and they get themselves into the state of, yes, I want to change. And then there is the gap. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that, and that's it. So what would be out of your story, what would be your one piece that you would like to hear about somebody going out and working on, coming off of listening to your story here today?
Write down a decision that you have to make. Once it's written down, it's out of your head. Once you have that decision made or written down, I want you to write out all your options. What are the options that you have to make that decision? One of the options could be don't do it. That's an option too, right?
Sure.
So once you have all the options written out, again, they're out of your head. The decision tornado that's going through your mind goes away because now it's written down. That's the biggest piece. Literally pick up a pen, no matter how heavy you think it's going to feel, and start writing things down. So write down your decision. What is it? Then start writing out your options. What do you have? Then pick a date. When are you going to decide by? And then finally, what's the one action that you're going to do to move closer to making that decision?
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today, Kevin.
Been great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
You bet.